Welcome to class, everyone. How's it going? Mr. Ocampo here. Just doing a special read session of Things Fall Apart because we could not finish Chapter 4 on Friday. I underestimated how much we were going to be talking about, so we're going to do another stream today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know that it's quite a bit of effort to stay in class, but thank you for making it out for this session. I really want to, make this a fruitful session, make it worth your while. So we're going to cover as much of Chapter 4 as we can, answer any questions. Feel free to type in chat, anything you might have for me, any insights that you might have or want to discuss or anything like that. I am going to be doing the slides for Thursday and Friday when we go over Chapter 4. So I will be editing it as we go. If you have anything you want me to add, any insights, please do feel free to speak up and share, what you got, because I really do want to, make this worthwhile. So without further ado, let's begin by starting at Chapter 4 again. I know in my last video, if you were watching it, we did make some progress, but we have some notes, but we can expound upon them. We can add to them. Let's start reading again. All right, starting at the beginning of Chapter 4, and remember, at this point, Okonkwo was remembering about the time where he borrowed money from Nwakibie. He got not money, rather, well, their form of wealth, yam seeds. But he had the worst harvest and planting season of his life. But he survived it. And we discussed in class all of the positive traits, positive characteristics that we can attribute to Okonkwo because he went through that. But in Chapter 4, we're going to see a kind of the opposite. We'll see if we can sympathize with him again, but I'll leave that up to you. All right. So Chapter 4. Right. We'll begin with this idea that haters are gonna hate. Remember, Okonkwo did not inherit any of his wealth. He worked for it. He worked for every bit of it. His father, Unoka, was a deadbeat, and he did not have anything to give to his son except for a whole lot of debt and a whole mess of trouble. So Okonkwo grew up with nothing, truly nothing, and he was able to make something of it. Looking at a king's mouth, said an old man, one would think he never sucked at his mother's breast. Ooh. Remember, the Igbo people, they speak in proverbs, and this is one of those proverbs. Looking at a king's mouth, one would think he never sucked at his mother's breast. So when you see someone that is rich, that's wealthy, they have a lot of power, you would never think like, oh man, they must have always enjoyed that power. Unlike a baby who is completely dependent on their mother to take care of them and feed them, you would never think that, like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos ever worked in a McDonald's or something like that, worked a lowly entry level job with minimum wage, and because now here they are, so rich and so wealthy. You would never think that. He was talking about Okonkwo, who had risen so suddenly from great poverty and misfortune to be one of the lords of the clan. The old man bore no ill will towards Okonkwo. Indeed, he respected him for his industry and success, but he was struck, as most people were, by Okonkwo's brusqueness in dealing with less successful men. So, basically, Okonkwo chewed someone out for being, not as worthy as he. And someone is kind of referring to Okonkwo as like, yo, man, calm down, be chill. Like, you're not like that big of a deal, right? But he was struck, as most people were, by Okonkwo's briskness in dealing with less successful men. Only a week ago, a man had contradicted him at a kindred meeting, which they held to discuss the next ancestral feast. Without looking at the man, Okonkwo had said, "This meeting is for men." The man who had contradicted him had no titles. That was why he had called him a woman. Okonkwo knew how to kill a man's spirit. Basically, someone disagreed with Okonkwo in an argument. And Okonkwo just shut him down. It's like, you're not fit to be here. You not man person. Everybody at the kindred meeting took sides with Osugo. So I guess that was the guy. Osugo, when Okonkwo called him a woman. The oldest man present said sternly that those whose palm kernels were cracked for them by a benevolent spirit should not forget to be humble. So the oldest man there was basically chastising Okonkwo for being, prideful, saying like, hey, you've been blessed in your life. Don't forget that, because, you're being really hurtful right now. Okonkwo said he was sorry for what he had said, and the meeting continued. But it was really not true that Okonkwo's palm kernels had been cracked for him by a benevolent spirit. He had cracked them himself. Anyone who knew his grim struggle against poverty and misfortune could not say he had been lucky. If ever a man deserved his success, that man was Okonkwo. At an early age, he achieved fame as the greatest wrestler in all the land. That was not luck. At the most, one would say that his chi, or personal god, was good. But the Igbo people have a proverb that when a man says yes, his chi says yes also. Okonkwo said yes very strongly, so his chi agreed. And not only his chi, but his clan too, because it judged a man by the work of his hands. That was why Okonkwo had been chosen by the 9 villages to carry a message of war to their enemies, unless they agreed to give up a young man and a virgin to atone for the murder of Udo's wife. This is going back to chapter 4, the whole the whole town meeting because the woman was killed, and Okonkwo had to give a message about war. And such was the deep fear that their enemies had for Umofia that they treated Okonkwo like a king and brought him a virgin who was given to Udo as his wife, and the lad Ikemefuna. So here we have, we're talking about Okonkwo and how he wasn't privileged. He did not inherit any wealth. So let's see what notes I took. Okonkwo had to work hard for everything he has. People respect him but don't understand him because they can't relate, which is true, Not all of us can relate to people who had to struggle and make it to where they're at. I, for one, can't. I inherited my wealth, Okonkwo is proud of his achievements. And I have to give him that. He should be proud, It's not often that you can say that you are successful in bringing yourself out of poverty. Okonkwo worked hard. Like, he deserves to have that pride, right? But when it comes to his interactions with the people, sometimes that pride gets a little in the way, just like it did with Osugo. So just remember that. Let's see. Okonkwo is honored, and that is why he was chosen to be the messenger of war. So this is like a transition. It was talking about Okonkwo and how he interacted with people, and now they're talking about what the result of that thing that happened in chapter 2. The fact that Okonkwo brought a message of war, and he came back with a young virgin and a young boy. And the young boy, Ikemefuna, should be in Okonkwo's care for a while. No one thought it would be as long as 3 years. They seemed to forget all about him as soon as they had taken the decision. So now we're going to see Ikemefuna and his relationship with Okonkwo. At first, Ikemefuna was very much afraid. Once or twice he tried to run away, but he did not know where to begin. He thought of his mother and his 3-year-old sister and wept bitterly. Nwoye's mother was very kind to him and treated him as one of her own children, but all he said was, "When shall I go home?" And Okonkwo heard that he would not eat any food. When Okonkwo heard that he would not eat any food, he came into the hut with a big stick in his hand and stood over him while he swallowed his yams, trembling. That's insane. Like, there is Okonkwo standing over him. I'm going to add here, when he refuses to eat, Okonkwo threatens him with a stick. How do you get over depression and refusing to eat because of your anxiety and depression? You have a friend threaten to beat you with a stick, right? That's what Okonkwo does. That's what he's doing. Um, a few moments later, he went behind the hut. He is in Okonkwo. Began to vomit painfully. Nwoye's mother went to him and placed her hands on his chest and on his back. He was ill for 3 market weeks. I don't know how long a market week is, so I don't know what that is. It could be a regular 7-day week, or maybe it's just a few days. I have no idea. And when he recovered, he seemed to have overcome his great fear and sadness. I don't know what happened to Ikemefuna. This was like a transformation for him. He got sick from eating all those yams all quick because he was being threatened by Okonkwo. But when he was done being sick, I guess he was okay being part of the family. Maybe they took care of him. After 3 weeks, he got used to it, and now he's part of the family. He was by nature a very lively boy, and he gradually became popular in Okonkwo's household, especially with the children. Okonkwo's son Nwoye, who was 2 years younger, became quite inseparable from him because he seemed to know everything. He could fashion out flutes from bamboo stems and even from the elephant grass. He knew the names of all the birds and could set clever traps for the little bush rodents. And he knew which trees made the strongest bows. Even Okonkwo himself became very fond of the boy. Inwardly, of course. Okonkwo never showed any emotion openly unless it was the emotion of anger. To show affection was a sign of weakness. The only thing worth demonstrating was strength. There it is. There is that Okonkwo never shows his affection. Why? Because to show affection is weakness. And what is Okonkwo scared of? He's scared of being seen as weak. Sorry, I just want to make sure that we're getting as much space as we can. If you can't see it, you want me to blow it up, you want me to explain anything, please let me know. He therefore treated Ikemefuna as he treated everyone else, the heavy hand, but there was no doubt that he liked the boy. Sometimes when he went to big village meetings or communal ancestral feasts, he allowed Ikemefuna to accompany him like a son, carrying his stool and his goatskin bag. And indeed, Ikemefuna called him father. Wow. So he's starting to see Okonkwo as his dad. Ikemefuna came to Omofia at the end of a carefree season between harvest and planting. In fact, he recovered from his illness only a few days before the Week of Peace began. And that was also the year Okonkwo broke the peace and was punished, as was the custom, by Ezeani, the priest of the earth goddess. Remember, the earth is sacred, right? The earth is sacred, embodied by a goddess, and Ezeani is the priest that kind of carries out the god's will. I guess they have the Week of Peace. So let me tell you. So Okonkwo is going to do the bad thing now. And part of the bad thing is that there's a rule called the Week of Peace. Week of Peace, right? We're going to talk about what the Week of Peace is. Okay, Okonkwo was provoked to justifiable anger by his youngest wife, who went to plait her hair at her friend's house and did not return early enough to cook the afternoon meal. Okonkwo did not know at first that she was not at home. After waiting in vain for her dish, he went to her hut to see what she was doing. There was nobody in the hut, and the fireplace was cold. "Where is Ojiugo?" he asked his second wife, who came out of her hut to draw water from the gigantic pot in the shade of a small tree in the middle of the compound. "She has gone to plait her hair." Okonkwo bit his lips as anger welled up within him. "Where are her children? Did she take them?" he asked with unusual coolness and restraint. "They are here," answered his first wife, Nwoye's mother. Okonkwo bent down and looked into her hut. Ojiugo's children were eating with the children of his first wife. Did she ask you to feed them before she went? Yes, lied Nuoye's mother, trying to minimize Ojiugo's thoughtlessness. Oh, she's lying. Okonkwo knew she was not speaking the truth. He walked back to his obi to await Ojiugo's return, and when she returned, he beat her very heavily. In his anger, he had forgotten that it was the week of peace. I'm going to guess, just off the top of my head, that the week of peace is a week when you don't do anything violent like beat your wife. Okay. So Okonkwo forgot it was the week of peace because he was so pissed off. In his anger, he had forgotten it was the week of peace. His first two wives ran out in great alarm, pleading with him that it was the sacred week. But Okonkwo was not the man to stop beating somebody halfway through, not even for fear of goddess. Remember, Okonkwo, he's very meticulous. He likes hard work, and he's persistent. So I was like, nah, I'm not going to leave this job half finished. We're gonna complete beating the snot out of you. So he's gonna finish beating his wife because he's mad because she wasn't home to cook lunch. So a couple of things that we're learning about the culture. Let's see. It is a woman's role to provide food at the appointed times to the head male. Each woman must provide for her own kids. So there's a bunch of like half brothers and sisters running around, and I guess the first wife was taking care of them. Let's see. Before it was dusk. Okay. So we're going to probably talk more about the week of peace. Okay, Okonkwo's neighbors heard his wife crying and sent their voices over the compound walls to ask what was the matter. Some of them came over to see for themselves. It was unheard of to beat somebody during the sacred week. Before it was dusk, Ezayani, who was the priest of the earth goddess, Ani, called on Okonkwo in his obi. Okonkwo brought out kola nut and placed it before the priest. There's that kola nut again. That kola nut that symbolizes life and friendship and hospitality. It's a sign of goodwill, right? Take away your kola nut. I shall not eat in the house of a man who has no respect for our gods and ancestors. Dang! What a slap in the face. Okonkwo was trying to be friendly to Ezayani. And Ezayani is like, nah, man, you beat your wife. This isn't friendly. This isn't a friendly visit. That's not cool. Wow, I like that. What a way to assert your position there. Okonkwo tried to explain to him what his wife had done, but Ezayani seemed to pay no attention. He held a short staff in his hand, which he brought down on the floor to emphasize his point. Oh, he had a staff. He's going like this, right? Just like we put claps in between everything we say. Listen to me, he said when Okonkwo had spoken. You are not a stranger in Umofia. You know as well as I do that our forefathers ordained that before we plant any crops in the earth, we should observe a week in which a man does not say a harsh word to his neighbor. We live in peace with our fellows to honor our great goddess of the earth. Okay, so we'll live in peace a week before harvest to honor the goddess of the earth. Okay. Besides the fact that Okonkwo beat his wife, I wonder what else he was doing wrong, which was violating the week of peace. And now we're learning what that cultural rule is. We live in peace with our fellows to honor our great goddess of the earth, without whose blessing our crops will not grow. You have committed a great evil. He brought down his staff heavily on the floor. Your wife was at fault. Oh, okay. Your wife was at fault. But even if you came into your obi and found her lover on top of her, you would still have committed a great evil to beat her. Like, it's so, like, they take the week of peace so seriously that if he came home to his wife cheating on him, if he still beat her, he would not be justified. Like, he would still have broken the week of peace. That's insane. So, oh man, okay. Even a wife is cheating on you and you beat her lover, that's still evil. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of you would disagree, would rather follow through and make sure that that beating were full in an extent, but in this case, because of their cultural observance of the week of peace, no way. I wonder if there's any equivalent to that in our present culture. Is there any rule that can't be broken during any given time? I know in some cultures, like, oh, we don't eat meat during this time because we're in observance of this thing for our religion, or something like that. And it's like, he's going to explain this. His staff came down again. The evil you have done can ruin the whole clan. The earth goddess whom you have insulted may refuse to give us her increase, and we shall all perish. Okay. So by making the earth mother mad, Okonkwo jeopardizes or puts at risk the entire clan because she won't give them good food. Earth will not provide a good harvest. There we go. If the weak peace is broken. His tone now changed from anger to command. You will bring to the shrine of Ani tomorrow 1 she-goat, 1 hen, a length of cloth, and 100 cowries. He rose and left the hut. I do not know how he came up with those like little, like that little sheet of like, here's what you need to do, but whatever. Okonkwo did as the priest said. He also took with him a pot of palm wine. Inwardly, he was repentant, but he was not the man to go about telling his neighbors that he was in error. Oh ho! Oh ho ho! Okay. Wait. Okonkwo. Wait, I wanna quote that. Okay. Inwardly, he was repentant, but he was not the man to go about telling his neighbors that he was in error. So what does that mean? What does that mean? So on the inside, he felt bad. He was sorry. He was like, all right, yeah, I did let my anger get a hold of me. I did beat my wife, and I probably shouldn't have done that, especially during the week of peace. But on the outside, he's not willing to admit that he was wrong. On the outside, he's not. He's putting up a front toward his neighbors. He doesn't want to admit it. Why doesn't he want to admit that he was wrong? Why doesn't Okonkwo want to admit he was wrong? I'm not going to answer this out loud right now because I want to see if anyone in class can answer it. If anyone in chat wants to provide the answer, that's cool. But I want to ask this question in class. Why doesn't Okonkwo want to admit he was wrong? Why? What do you think? What is motivating that decision? And so, people said he had no respect for the gods of the clan. Ho ho! What was the results? People think he doesn't respect. It's like when kids get in trouble and they feel bad for what they did, but they got to put up a tough guy attitude for some reason. I wonder why they do that. They called him the little bird Nza, who so far forgot himself after a heavy meal that he challenged his chi. Okay. Another the little bird Nza. No work was done during the week of peace. People called on their neighbors and drank palm wine. This year, they talked of nothing else but the Nsoani, which Okonkwo committed. I think this is like a crime. Nsoani. It was the first time for many years that a man had broken the sacred peace. Even the oldest man could only remember one or two other occasions somewhere in the dim past. Okay. Since nobody works during the week of peace, they all gossip about it. They all gossip about what's going on. Okay. Ogwefi Ezuedu, who was the oldest man in the village, was telling two other men who came to visit him that the punishment for breaking the peace of Ani had become a very mild in their clan. It has not always been so, he said. My father told me that he had been told that in the past, a man who broke the peace was dragged on the ground through the village until he died. But after a while, this custom was stopped because it spoiled the peace with which it was meant to preserve. That makes sense. Why would you punish the disturbance of the peace with more disturbance of the peace? Somebody told me yesterday, said one of the younger men, that in some clans it is an abomination for a man to die during the week of peace. It is indeed true, said Ogwefi Zweru. They have that custom in Obodoani. I guess it's another... This is weird. So we're learning about a culture, and that culture is criticizing other cultures. This is actually going to happen more than once. It's kind of ironic. If a man dies at this time, he is not buried but cast into the evil forest. It is a bad custom which these people observe because they lack understanding. They throw away large numbers of men and women without burial. And what is the result? Their clan is full of the evil spirits of these unburied dead, hungry to do harm to the living. Whew. After the week of peace, every man and his family began to clear the bush and make new farms. The cut bush was left to dry, and fire was then set to it. As the smoke rose into the sky, kites appeared from different directions. Okay, wait. No, there's still a lot. Okay. We're going to duplicate this slide because we're talking Okonkwo the Dad Part 2, the farmer. You know what? Actually, I'm going to change this. This isn't about Okonkwo the Dad at all. This is about Ikemefuna, the boy. And this is about Okonkwo the Dad. All right. Where are we? Blah, blah, blah. Here we go. They're talking about farming now. So far, no questions. No one. Oh, yeah, he is. Thank you, Miss Hanson Robles. Welcome. Yeah, he is too proud to admit that he was wrong. And it's pride because of where he came from. But what else could we be seeing if we aren't if we admit that we're wrong? What else are we seen as? It's Okonkwo's number one fear, you know? It's pride, but also fear of being seen as the one who is wrong and therefore weak. This is what's driving his thought process. But yeah, like I said, there's so much to unpack in this in this chapter, because I added another slide because now we're talking about Okonkwo when he farms. So they're now talking about farming. The cut bush was left to dry and fire was then set to it. As the smoke rose into the sky, kites appeared from different directions and hovered over the burning field in silent valediction. The rainy season was approaching when they would go away until the dry season returned. Okonkwo spent the next few days preparing his seed yams. He looked at each yam carefully to see whether it was good for sowing. Sometimes he decided that a yam was too big to be sown as one seed, and he split it deftly along its length with a sharp knife. His eldest son, Nwoye, and Ikemefuna helped him by fetching the yams in long baskets from the barn and in counting the prepared seeds in groups of 400. Remember, Okonkwo wants to plant upwards of 1,200 I think. Like he got like 800 from like in the last chapter he got 800 seed yams from no Nobikie, and he got 400 seed yams from another his father's friend. That's 1200. So he's hand in like hand inspecting one by one each yam to see if it's good for planting. That's like okay, so Conquo gets ready to plant his farm, shows skill and meticulousness. Meticulous means that you are very detail oriented, and that's a lot of hard work, right? If you've ever inspected everything one by one, that's working really hard. So it shows skill and meticulousness in his craft, right? So again, it's showing that Okonkwo is a hard worker. Sometimes he decided that a yam was too big. His eldest son, Nwoye and Ikemefuna, helped him by fetching the yams in long baskets from the barn and counting the prepared seeds in groups of 400. Sometimes Okonkwo gave them a few yams each to prepare, but he always found fault with their effort, and he said so with much threatening. Okonkwo tries to teach the boys how to do his job. Very critical. He is very mean. This is like Okonkwo would be like the Gordon Ramsay of the kitchen here. You know, he's not really like he's got a lot of skill, but when it comes to working with his kids, you know, do you think you are cutting up yams for cooking? He asked Nwoye. If you split another yam of this size, I shall break your jaw. You shall think you are still a child. You think you are still a child. I began to own a farm at your age, and you, he said to Ikemefuna, do you not grow yams where you come from? Listen to this guy. When I was your age, I could shuck yams. Like, how many people have heard their parents say like, oh, when I was your age, I already had a job and 2 kids. Like, get off my back, Dad. Like, let me do my work. You know, Okonkwo really is, he's really threatening in this. This is an example of how threatening he is. And yet, inwardly, Okonkwo knew that the boys were still too young to understand fully the difficult art of preparing seed yams. So inside, Okonkwo knows, like, these guys are actually doing pretty good. I'm just giving them a hard time because, well, why is he giving them a hard time? Why is he choosing these words? He thought that one could not begin too early. Yam stood for manliness. Okay. So Okonkwo tries to teach the boys how to do their job. He's very critical. He's very mean. He wants them to learn because yams, not only do they equal money and value, they also mean manliness. Yams are manliness. Yam stood for manliness, and he who could feed his family on yams from one harvest to another was a very great man indeed. Okonkwo wanted his son to be a great farmer and a great man. He would stamp out the disquieting sons of laziness, which he thought he already saw in him. Ha! I like this. This is a good quote. He would stamp out the disquieting signs of laziness, which he thought he already saw in him. And this is the key part of this quote. He thought he already saw. He might not be seeing it at all, but the fact that he's thinking, like, he's holding him to such a high standard, that's where is he getting that standard from? From his experiences with his dad. He's afraid of that laziness, not just in himself, but in his son. So he's starting to see laziness, even though, you know, for all intents and purposes, his son might not be that lazy. Just Okonkwo has an incredibly high standard. I will not have a son who cannot hold up his head in the gathering of the clan. I would sooner strangle him with my own hands. And if you stand staring at me like that, he swore, Amadiora will break your head for you. He would rather kill his son than have to deal with a lazy son. That's insane. I don't know if that's an empty threat. We'll see what happens later on in the book. Some days later, when the land had been moistened by 2 or 3 heavy rains, Okonkwo and his family went to the farm with baskets of seed yams, their hoes and machetes, and the planting began. They made single mounds of earth in straight lines all over the field and sowed the yams in them. By the way, if you ever get a chance, I highly recommend going to Gilcrease Orchard, way up in North Vegas. But around the next fall, I highly recommend that you go to Gilcrease Orchard when they open it up for apple picking and all that fun stuff, because, and I kid you not, I picked yams up in Gilcrease Orchard. I have picked yams before. They are in mounds of dirt because they are a dirt growing root, and you have to dig them up out of the ground, and you have to plant them and then dig them up out of the ground when they're fully ripened. Like, I have dug for yams before. I know what they're talking about. The mounds of earth and straight lines and all that. Yeah. Highly recommend going and doing that. In fact, I should remember that for next year. I'll have my next class take a field trip to Gilcrease Orchard so that they can find yams, so that they know what this is like. Yam, the king of crops, was a very exacting king. For 3 or 4 moons, it demanded hard work and constant attention from cockcrow till the chickens went back to roost. The young tendrils were protected from earth heat with rings of sisal leaves. As the rains became heavier, the women planted maize, melons, and beans between the yam mounds. The yams were then staked, first with little sticks and later with tall and big tree branches. The women weeded the farm 3 times at definite periods in the life of the yams, neither early nor late. This is a process. Farming yams is a process, and that's why Unoka would never get a good harvest, because it requires work. And Okonkwo is not afraid of work. And now the rains had finally come, so heavy and persistent, even the village rainmaker no longer claimed to be able to intervene. He could not stop the rain now, just as he would not attempt to start it in the heart of the dry season, without serious danger to his own health. The personal dynamism required to counter the forces of these extremes of weather would be far too great for the human frame. And so nature was not interfered with in the middle of the rainy season. Sometimes it poured down in such thick sheets of water that earth and sky seemed merged in one gray wetness. It was then uncertain whether the low rumbling of Amadiora's thunder, so I guess it's like the god of the sky. I think that might be the god of the sky, in particular lightning, because it's talking thunder. And remember, up here, Amadiora will break your head for you. I wonder if he's talking like, if you keep doing this, you're going to get struck by lightning. I don't know. Or maybe they think that the thunderclap of thunder is a god being angry, and maybe the clap is like the cracking of a skull. I don't know. I'm just guessing. At such times, in each of the countless thatched huts of Umofia, children sat around their mother's cooking fire telling stories, or with their father in his obi warming themselves from a log fire, roasting and eating maize. It was a brief resting. By the way, maize is corn. They plant corn and they eat corn. It's like a wild corn. It was a brief resting period between the exacting and arduous planting season and the equally exacting but lighthearted month of harvest. So after you plant, you kind of have to let the plants do their work. So the rain is going to nurture the earth and give the plants the water that they need. And while it's raining, you just kind of can't really do anything. You just wait. So it's this part that they are waiting. Ikemefuna had begun to feel like a member of the Okonkwo's family. He still thought about his mother and his 3-year-old sister, and he had moments of sadness and depression. But he and Nwoye had become so deeply attached to each other that such moments became less frequent and less poignant. Ikemefuna had an endless stock of folk tales. Even those which Nwoye knew already were told with a new freshness and the local flavor of a different clan. Nwoye remembered this period very vividly till the end of his life. He even remembered how he had laughed when Ikemefuna told him that the proper name for a corn cob with only a few scattered grains was Eze Agadi Nwayi, or the teeth of an old woman. Just imagine that. What like when you bite into a corn and then you have just a couple of kernels left. It's called the teeth of the old woman. These guys are hilarious, telling their stories and making jokes. Nwoye's mind had gone immediately to Nwayeke, who lived near the Udala tree. She had about 3 teeth and was always smoking her pipe. So, an old woman that actually legit only has 3 teeth. Gradually, the rains became lighter and less frequent, and earth and sky once again became separate. The rain fell in thin, slanting showers through sunshine and quiet breeze. Children no longer stayed indoors, but ran about singing. The rain is falling, the sun is shining. Alone, Nnadi is cooking and eating. Nwoye always wondered who Nnadi was and why he should live all by himself, cooking and eating. In the end, he decided that Nnadi must live in that land of Ikemefuna's favorite story, where the ant holds his court in splendor and the sands dance forever. Okay, we actually get a little glimpse into Nwoye. So Okonkwo is all about that hard work and making sure that, his kids are not lazy. Nwoye, I like this quote here. Nwoye remembered this period very vividly till the end of his life. I mean, like, for you to remember a period of your life that vividly, it must mean it's important. And it was when Ikemefuna told stories and he had a bond with Nwoye. Right? That's the reason why I bring that up, is because telling stories is not what Okonkwo does, right? Who told stories, or at least sang music and loved the carefree things. It was his father, Unoka. So in a way, Nwoye is starting to show signs that he's more like Unoka, because he enjoys the stories. He enjoys the peace between the planting and the harvest season. So remember, our key skill that we're trying to get through in this novel is characterization. We want to characterize not just Okonkwo, but the other characters, Ikemefuna, Nwoye, and we are going to learn about other characters like we've been learning about Unoka. We're going to learn about some of the wives, some of his children. So I know it's going to be hard to keep track of. That's why it's important to keep on top of your reading and to ask questions. So that is the end of chapter 4. That's a lot of information. We've got some critical parts. Number 1, we got characterization of Okonkwo, and that people are just going to hate him because he exists as someone who has come out of poverty. We have Ikemefuna, the boy who got used to living with Okonkwo and being part of the family, and is now starting to worry less and less about his old family, and is starting to become comfortable. He's fitting in and he's enjoying it, even with Okonkwo as a father, which so far Okonkwo doesn't seem too bad of a dad, especially when you consider like how he interacts with them during farming. It's just this part. Okonkwo does a bad thing, but really, okay, I'm not a fan of beating anyone, especially your significant other. I do not condone it at all. But if you take into regards to this culture, where I think it's seen as, a disciplinary thing for a man to beat his wife, but definitely not during the week of peace. And it seems like Okonkwo, he is sensitive to it. It's just he has anger problems, and he has control issues. Like, if he can't control when his wives give him food, then is he really a man? That kind of thought process. So I can see where Okonkwo is coming from, but at the same time, it's still not good. And as a dad, I can see where he's coming from. He is just trying to make sure his boys grow up the way that he wants them to grow up, which is strong and proud men. But the way he's doing it, he's incredibly critical. He's mean. He wants to stamp out the disquieting signs of laziness, which he thinks he sees in them. Maybe to the outsider, Nwoye and Ikemefuna are actually very hardworking. But to Okonkwo, who has an incredibly high standard, he's like that, that parent just demands everything from their kids. And I can't blame them because they want what's best for them, so they have to keep pushing. And so we have Nwoye as well, who's starting to get characterized. We see that he's uh, starting to show signs that he's like Unoka. He likes the stories. Um, and I believe in a previous chapter, uh, he grows up to be a very sad-faced youth because of Okonkwo's chastising. So, yeah, this is a good summary of chapter 4. I'm looking forward to presenting this to those who didn't see this in class. I think, is there anything that's not clear that maybe I should find pictures of or explain more? Because these are our 4 main slides, the 4 main parts of the story. And I do want to add other slides, just like I did with these slides. I added some slides with pictures to help us understand what's going on. So we should add some more slides so that when it comes to Thursday, Friday, and we look at this again, we can remember and we can better visualize this. I wonder what do rows of yams looks like. Aha, yep. That makes sense. This picture right here, that would be rows of yams. You can see the singular mound that goes in a straight row, and then they plant things in between. Yep, and then you have to dig out the yams. Those are the yams. Yep. So let's see if that's a pretty good image. I wonder if there's a better one. Yeah. Good stuff. So we're starting to see it. So let's put that. This is toward the end. This is my process here, guys. If you ever wonder what the work a teacher does to make sure that their presentations are good, it's a painful process. This is why we get paid the big bucks. There's our rows of yams. There we go. So that we're ready for Thursday, Friday. What else do we need to show? Yeah, I'm not sure. He must feel better about himself. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what necessarily. I don't think it's he feels better about himself. I think he feels like that's his duty, that's his job. I really hope that we're able to break down and understand his rationale. But we discussed in class, on Monday and Tuesday when we talked about chapter 3, that Okonkwo has an insane fear of being like his father, and he will do anything it takes to be not like his father, essentially weak. So we determine what he sees as strong and what's weak, and what's strong is planting yams. What's weak is listening to stories. That might be something that we want to discuss in class. What does, from Okonkwo's point of view, is considered manly or strong and considered weak or feminine? And do we share that? Because I'll be honest, I don't share a lot of what he considers masculine and feminine. But are there things in our society that we consider masculine or feminine? I wonder, like, maybe I'll ask you in class. Do you believe that the boy should pay for dinner at the end of the first date? Is that a cultural sign of masculinity and an expectation, or is it okay to split the bill? Especially now, you guys are figuring things out as teenagers, what your morals and ethics are, and I'm curious to see what you all think and what you've learned throughout your interactions with your culture, or what the culture of the media has shared with you. I wonder what you've decided is strength and what's weakness, because that is what we are seeing with Okonkwo. He's decided what's strength and what's weak, and we're going to see if we agree or not. So that is our slightly less than 1 hour read of chapter 4. I'm sorry it took so long, but as you can see, these chapters are starting to get very deep, and it's going to get even more so. So we might do 2 streams a week. Who knows? Let me know what you think. I'll bring it up in the chat in